Imam Sahib? And Sadar Sahib? No, Swami Sahib, please. Have you finished with formalities?
Hazur, we have 75 guests and about 20 questions. 75 guests, about 20 questions have been presented. I'll read out the first question. This question is from Mr. Alan Burke from Ealing. Mr. Burke? Mr. Burke's question is, how can inter-religious activities be directed towards the betterment of humanity in general?
This question, I think, is a bit involved in the sense that different people react differently if religious activities are directed towards them. Religious activities are an individual's affair mainly, or those individuals which are governed by a system and organization, like in the case of Ahmadiyyat, are not the general rule. But he is asking about religious activities as such. So in my opinion, most of the people who preach to others are not directed. They do it by themselves, and that's what I think. Or if they are directed, I doubt if they are individually directed by the community, which is the case in Jamaat Ahmadiyya. We take care that every person who preaches our views, our religious views to others, preaches them in a very special manner. So I can relate to you that instruction, from which you can infer your own conclusions. I always direct Ahmadis to convey the message to others with the conviction that it is good for them, number one. But do not call them to Islam as such. As Allah directs us in the Holy Quran, you always call them towards Allah, that is God, which is a common factor, common to all religious activities. So whenever you begin preaching others by inviting them to Islam, there is bound to develop a counter-resistance. And your preaching will become by that much difficult. But when you call towards Allah, that is God, at least those people who believe in Him will be attracted to this message, yes, and they can say, we also believe in Him and our activities are directed, are oriented towards Him. So then the discussion can begin and you can tell them that our approach to Allah is easier and more rational. Now, this will be the beginning of a dialogue which will not be based on antagonism. That would be based on a mutual effort to reach a common goal. So this is how I advise Ahmadis, and I hope you will take your lesson from this, and everyone who belongs to any religious denomination should follow this course, which I believe is better. Have you been answered properly? Thank you.
This question is from Mr. Bill Simpson from Birmingham.
Yes.
His question is...
Who is Mr. Bill Clinton, you said?
Simpson, Bill Simpson.
I'm glad it's not Clinton. Yes, please. Thank you. Yes.
I am at the crossroads. My religion is Church of England. What can you say to me to convince me that your religion is the road for me to take?
My religion is?
Church of England.
No. How can I say what? My religion is what? What should I tell him? What is the last bit of the question?
What can you say to me to convince me that your religion is the road for me to take?
That question has been only partially answered already. The fact is that I believe that Islam, as we understand Islam, is a universal religion. And it can appeal to the human conscience everywhere in the world. While, as I believe Christianity to be understood today, it cannot be considered universal. That is the first point which you should settle with us. If I prove my case that Islam is universal in its appeal, while Christianity is not universal in its appeal, though to look at it appears to be a bitter contest between us, but I'll explain it is not bitter at all. Christianity, when it began, it differed with its religious view from the previously held views in Judaism. And also it differs even today with all the religious beliefs held elsewhere in the world, because no one believes in other religions that God gave birth to a son, and that son took the burden of all people's sins, provided they believe in him. Now, this view is not shared by most so-called divine religions. And the second, more difficult part is that when you invite them to Christianity, they will have to abandon their previously held views and their previously held religious leaders whom they hold in honor and reverence. For instance, a Hindu cannot join a Christianity unless he abandons Krishna and Rama and whoever he considers to be a man of reverence, or the so-called God of reverence. He will have to abandon all of them and then turn to Jesus. The same is true of Sikhs, the same is true of Buddhists and all other religious denominations. Now, this is the major difference between Islamic approach and Christian approach. Islam emphasizes the fact that God sent true prophets or messengers to all the people of the world, and at all times. As such, when a Hindu is approached by a Muslim, he will not have to abandon Krishna or Rama. He will only have to understand them in the within the framework of Islamic understanding, which will not sever his ties from his reverend leaders, but will give them a new meaning. That part I will explain further, and then perhaps you'll understand. Krishna is understood to be a God incarnate by many Hindus, while Islam believes that Krishna was only a messenger of God.